everyone, and welcome to a Modern Sales Pros event. I'm super excited to get started with our esteemed panelists today for the topic, the road to VP of RevOps. But before we begin, I'll give a moment for folks to trickle in. I'd love to ask our panelists a fun little icebreaker question as we let folks trickle in. And I'd love to know, are you a morning person or a night person? And let's go start with Nathan.
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that question. So I would say normally I am a little bit more of a night person, but given the nature of the time zones that we work across with ChargeBee, I have definitely had to adapt. So I am quickly on my way to becoming a morning person.
Very nice. Anil, how about you?
I'm definitely a morning person, and it's kind of funny Nate said that. Nate and I had a conversation at 6 this morning, so we are up and running pretty early here.
And what time do you typically go to bed? Just want to know in terms of if you wake up that early, do you start to wind down around 9? Or I have some friends that stay up till like 1 and then get up at 6.
No,
Person,
I'm
I'm an early one. I go to bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm turned in.
It's nice.
yeah, I try to do about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Usually ends up being 10:30, 11. So
Yes. And Siva, what about you?
I'm actually the exact opposite of Nate. I'm actually a morning person, but the current work and how I keep shuttling between US and India means that when I'm in India, I do late nights for work. So yeah, so a lot of adapting to my preference.
Yes, a lot of adapting, a lot of time zone changes, especially when you work in this industry. You just have to be on the phone no matter what. So, thank you for answering. And let's get started. But before we begin, I'll say a few words about the team at Modern Sales Pros. Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP. And if you're not familiar with MSP, we are one of the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer questions they struggle to solve on their own and help them to see around corners they may not know about. We do this through our live sessions like the one you're at today. We also have an online robust forum, our quarterly summits, which just happened a few weeks ago, and we are starting to get back into in-person events. So if you're not already a part of MSP, you'll be invited to join right after this event. Quick note on housekeeping. First and foremost, this event is recorded, so if you have a friend or colleague or would love to watch this afterwards, again, the event along with the key takeaways and any links mentioned on this call will be made available on the previous event page before the end of the day. Second, if you have a question for our esteemed panelists, please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner or leverage the chat and let us know where you're calling in from. Next, I'm super pleased to announce our sponsor for today's event, Everstage. I'm actually going to pass it off to Siva to say a few words about Everstage.
Thanks, Angelica. Hey, everyone. Super excited to be here. Everstage is a modern sales commission management platform. We work very closely with mid-market and enterprise companies, with revenue operations leaders like yourselves, to help automate the entire sales commission management process, as well as drive insights and behavioral changes through incentives and commissions management. We currently rank the number one sales commission software on G2 as well as on Gartner with a rating of 4.9 on 5 based on 1,000 plus customer reviews. Would love to have you all check out if there's a need on mstage.com.
Amazing, thank you. And congrats on number one on G2. And next, I'm actually going to pass it back to Siva. Siva's going to be moderating today's session. Siva, please introduce yourself and as well as the other panelists, and I'll come back for closing remarks. Siva, take it away.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Angelica. And this topic, the road to VP of RevOps, is very special to me because prior to starting Everstage, I used to be a RevOps leader myself. I led the revenue operations globally for the now public company Freshworks. Built the team from scratch. Saw the journey from 2-digit ARR to well over 3-digit in ARR, million dollars that is. And so have been through the path of building revenue operations and seeing how strategic revenue operations could be for the company's growth, as well as the path of becoming a RevOps leader, right? And what it requires for you to be on that journey to become the VP of RevOps and like a senior leader in RevOps. So super special and close to my heart in terms of a topic, but also very excited because we have two distinguished leaders today joining us to kind of talk about their journeys, their experiences of hiring senior leaders, as well as just being through the path of rising up to be a leader in revenue operations. So super excited to welcome Anil Somani, who's the SVP of Global Revenue Strategy and Operations at ChargeBee, as well as Nate Carter, who's head of RevOps at ChargeBee. Over to you, Anil, to kind of talk about a little bit about yourself before handing it over to Nate.
Awesome. Thanks, Siva. So hey everyone, my name's Anil Samani. I have been in and around RevOps for 25 years. And I actually started way back when at a company called AT&T as a hardcore FP&A kind of analyst. And I pretty quickly moved into, at that time it was sales ops. And I remember the call I was on. A couple of you have probably heard this story. I remember the call I was on where I was, every week my group president held a leadership call with his VPs. And this week, every week he would give me 5 minutes to go through operational stuff, pipeline, all that kind of good stuff. And this week, I don't know what got into me for breakfast or what, but I was really feeling bold. And I really got after our VPs. I really got at, why is your pipeline not updated? Tell me about this. Why is close one behind pacing this? And I got after him. And I got a text from my group president, and he said, "Hey, let's meet for a drink afterwards." And when I went down, originally I thought, okay, man, I'm going to get fired. I thought I'm going to get in trouble. And he said, "Look, you're very good from an operational perspective, but you're a bit jaded." And I said, "Okay, help me understand how to get around that." And he said, "Well, you need to get closer to sales. You need to understand sales." And what we ended up doing, I thought he would just send me to go shadow a couple calls or go on a ride along or something. And what he ultimately said is, "Hey, I've arranged for you to go lead the southern region, the sales region for AT&T. The announcement goes out tomorrow." And so immediately overnight, I was in charge of a $300 million business. And my heart just dropped, because now all the things that I was complaining about, I was responsible for in the matter of one conversation. And most of my career at AT&T was bouncing back and forth between sales and operations. And then I found this spot of RevOps in the middle, and I just fell in love with it because it really drew my kind of operational experiences and the way my mind worked with all of the action that comes with sales. And so it created an empathy for me. It created an understanding for me for both sides of the house. And so, like I said, most of my career at AT&T was bouncing back and forth between the different roles, but building partner channels or building a partner segment, running sales organizations, and then running RevOps. Have had stints across other companies, including inside sales. I ran RevOps plus the BD team over there. Worked for a company called Splunk, and really saw some extreme growth during that period. Went on and worked at a company called Cloudflare. I see a couple of Cloudflare folks in here, Neha and Aaron Trott. So went on and worked with a couple of those folks there. And then, most recently have come over to went to Pluralsight and then on to ChargeBee, where I lead our RevOps function, and have been here about 6 months.
That's fantastic. And super excited to see how you ended up in revenue operations, over a conversation, right? And obviously, all these years into the leadership on the RevOps and broadly revenue strategy itself. Fantastic, Anil, to have you on this session. Over to you, Nate.
Yeah, thanks. Nate Carter. So I've been doing RevOps for Oh, probably close to about 15 years in some function or another. Prior to that, I'd done just a lot of business ops. I had aligned myself, actually, it was in finance departments, as far as that side of the business goes, and had taken on a couple of extra roles for the company I was at, and had asked at one point, hey, I think I'm ready to move back into an ops role, and was not thinking of sales ops or rev ops, but there was a sales ops position open, and I thought, I really don't want to do that. Sales are the people that go and they cause the problems, and they're the ones whose data we need to fix, and that sort of thing. But I agreed to do it, and I gave it a try, and I loved it. I loved the thrill of the hunt. I loved being involved with the sellers, and just watching the motions that they would go through, and the need to strategize and to try to figure out solutions to those complex problems in order to land that revenue, and have just loved it ever since. And similar to Anil, kind of found my home, and found what motivates me and really drives me. So I've now been at Charge B for about I think coming up to 3 months now, a little over 2 months. The areas I'm primarily focused on, insights and analytics. We're spinning up a deal desk, getting that function mature. The commissions side of the house, and then tools and technology. So glad to be here.
Fantastic. Super excited to, as I said, engage on the conversation on Road to VP of RevOps with these two distinguished RevOps leaders. Let's start off by quickly defining what RevOps means. Either one of you can take, Nate or Anil. What do you, in your mind, define as RevOps? Because obviously, different companies have been doing this differently. So if there were to be one, at least broad universal definition, what would be that in your mind?
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in, Nate, and then you can correct me where I'm wrong. I think we've seen the evolution of RevOps from these siloed functions of sales, CS, marketing, and now even like product ops and some of these kind of tangential functions. We've seen this overarching operational function that really thinks about full customer life cycle, analytics, kind of any one comp is another one. Any one deep facet around operation, but spanning across the full life cycle. The other thing I've seen is a transition from traditional sales ops or kind of functional ops is this elevation of profile. So I think, so much we've seen kind of one-way type requests coming to RevOps, and now RevOps is kind of being elevated as this strategic leader, and you're seeing it positioned at different companies in different ways. So as I think about RevOps, I think functionally there's a field ops organization, and that field ops can be sales ops, CS ops, marketing ops, product ops, any of the business units, and those are kind of chief of staffs off to the CXOs that manage those functions. Then I think about a center of excellence, and actually that's what Nate leads for me today. And that's deep functional area, right? So comp, tools and tech, insights and analytics, things like that. Deal desk is another function that kind of sits in there. Sales enablement. I see Jordan is on the call today. So Jordan Timothy leads that function for me. So global sales enablement. And that function has also taken this large leap, I think, from what old school, it used to be training. And now we think about it significantly different. So we have that function incorporated in RevOps. And then the last piece is this business transformation role. And I see Caitlin's on here too. So Caitlin leads that for me. And she's really, that's someone who thinks about the business 6 and 12 months out, right? Because RevOps can very, very quickly get tactical and more about reporting, and you lose sight of the long-term vision. So where's the strategy and what we're doing? And that's that business transformation role.
That's excellent. Nate, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, just to add on to that, I certainly agree with what Anil has called out, but one of the things that I think the RevOps function starts to look through is you've got all these different groups that are doing their own thing, and they're focused on their own deliverables, but it's the RevOps function that ties those together and serves as kind of the core to remind everybody we're all working together, and every single one of these handoff points needs to work well with the next group, either upstream or downstream. So I think RevOps serves a good function there as well.
Absolutely. I think RevOps is kind of the binding force across all of the go-to-market functions in some sense. Looks at the long-term as well as the short-term operations and make sure things are going smooth. So I think I think that's a great place to start off this conversation with, because now that we've defined RevOps, we could jump into talking about what's this, what does it mean to become a leader in RevOps, right? And obviously you've hired several leaders in revenue operations yourself during your career. And so, what do you look for when you're hiring a new VP of RevOps, right? Like, what are the challenges today in the market, and what should people focus on if they have to build their path towards becoming a leader in RevOps?
So it's so funny. I was looking through the attendee list. There's 4 people on here. We've got a VP of Field Ops role open. There's 4 candidates I'm interviewing. So I'm about to give them the answer card in what to hone up on for the interview. So when I think about a leader over RevOps, and regardless of the function, right? There are 3 core areas that I really think about. One is the ability to think strategically and operate tactically. And we'll get into it a little bit later in terms of like skill set to hold on to, but that is one of those things that in any one meeting, in any one day, I expect these RevOps leaders and myself to be able to really think about the long-term vision, but more importantly, like how do you marry it to day-to-day execution? And I look for that ability to go up and down in any given conversation, that flexibility, adaptability there. Number 2 is coming into any company. I want someone who can infuse best practices and kind of stay sharp on those best practices. So I think about think about things like lead routing. I think about territory assignment, comp plans. Those worlds are changing extremely quickly. And I want someone to come in and say, hey, look, like you're having this problem not driving multi-year, or you're having this problem trying to get this across, and have them say, yeah, I've done this before, and here are 3 ideas on how we can do this better here. It may not be the perfect one for us at the company, but here are 3 ideas to start the conversation. So they have to be up to date on the latest, but then also have the ability to infuse best practices in a meaningful way, right? You can't just drive change from the outside just because. And then the third thing is the ability to coach and develop others and help elevate others around them. One person doing everything is I guess okay, but to be able to elevate the organization and have others think at a different macro level is really important. In terms of your comment around challenges with the market, I think speed right now is at a premium in the marketplace. So the marketplace for any one of the industries we all represent is highly dynamic. There are new entrants coming in, there are companies going out of business. The VC world's kind of slowed down a little bit, and so there's a premium on adaptability and speed to change. And so one of the things I would really think about as RevOps leaders are kind of trying to figure out how they build their leadership style is how they embrace change. Anytime any change is introduced, you've got 1 of 2 ways to react to it. Like you can push on it and say, hey, I'm not doing it, it's too much, the organization will never take it, blah, blah, blah. Or you can embrace it, you can understand it. And I think the latter is the right way to really drive an organization to achieve that next level of results. And I'm not saying drive change for change's sake, but you can A/B test a lot of different things. You can drive different mechanisms by which it's measured change. And then I would say that you can measure that change on the backside, right? So driving a cadence by every 2 weeks. Hey, we said we were going to go test this out. Every week or every 2 weeks, we report on it. We figure out, okay, hey, is this the right answer? Is it the wrong answer? And it's okay if it's the wrong answer. Let's go do something different. So being open to that change and being able to drive and measure it is kind of the feedback or guidance I'd have for folks.
Love it, Anil. And love your top 3 points that you mentioned for what you look at, right? Thinking strategically, but being able to operate operationally and tactically, getting the best practices in, and then obviously being able to coach and help everyone rise up. Fantastic, Nate. If you could share your own personal journey, right? Like how you moved from being someone new in the role of RevOps to rising up to become a VP of RevOps. What did that journey for you look like, and any specific areas that you wanted to touch upon?
Yeah, I'll try to summarize it in a fairly quick pattern. I started my tech career with a very large, $1 billion plus per year public company. I was actually hired to run or manage our negotiations with our academic contracts. So for grade schools and colleges, those institutions, and that's how I started in the tech industry. One of the things that happened, though, within a few weeks, I was asked to participate in a project where we were taking an Oracle ERP that we were running and building basically a custom module so that we could track all of the deliverables that we had with all these contracts that we'd signed. Oracle didn't have anything like that at the time. Through my undergraduate degree, I had actually run a chain of bicycle stores. And so I had done a lot of point of sale implementations. And so I dabbled with that kind of thing. And as we were having these meetings on this custom project, I started throwing out suggestions and ideas. And people started to pay attention to them a little bit and say, hey, we hadn't thought of that. We could try that. And within a few weeks, I was asked, hey, would you mind switching your role? We think you've got a knack for a little more on this project side and how to manage this stuff on an ongoing basis. I said, sure, I'm having fun with it. Let's do it. So I made that transition. From there, I wore multiple hats within that company, and it was always operations focused. I'd done, bill of materials for the products and to ensure how do we get the products how can we book those orders? How can we manage the deliverables that we need to provide to the customers? Custom projects on our customer portals and things like that. So always very operationally focused. And at one point, I was actually asked, hey, we need somebody to run the real estate side of the business. So someone to come in. We had a pretty large real estate portfolio. We had groups in the 3 major geographies, but each was using different systems and reporting different metrics. And I said, I don't know real estate. I'm not a real estate guy at all. But my boss at the time said, I don't need that. I need somebody who knows data and can build out some process for us. So I did that I was close to about 2 years. And I had mentioned this a little bit earlier. At that point, I felt like I've delivered what I was asked to do. I want to move back into a more pure operations role because that's what I enjoyed doing. And the only thing that was available right at that moment was sales ops. And I thought, I don't want to do that. And as I'd mentioned, I finally agreed I will do this. And the funny part is we did it right. I literally moved into that role, I think 3 or 4 days before the annual planning needed to happen. And I had, as memory serves, $830 million worth of renewal revenue to plan out and to allocate out to the right reps and the right territories. It just got buried, just completely overwhelmed, and probably a month's worth of misery just trying to figure all this stuff out. Didn't have a good transition plan from the person that was in the previously in that role, but was able to make it work. And from there, I just started to love it, running forecast calls, dealing with the sales reps, and really, really enjoyed it. Long story short on that company, I spent about 14 years with the company through a series of acquisitions and sell-offs and that sort of thing, and finally decided it's time to move on. And that's where I first met Anil. So he hired me at a company called InsideSales.com to stand up a deal desk, and the pace of play there just skyrocketed. Super fast. No time to lick your wounds after one project ended. You're moving right on to the next one. And I loved it. I loved the energy. I loved just everything about learning how to run that SaaS business, and had a really good time there. I moved on from that company into a customer experience company, and I was there. We were acquired by a company called In Moment, but we were for about 3 years. Well, I was there for about 3 years, and we moved that company from running at a pretty significant loss to actually being profitable. And then we were acquired by a company called In Moment. And I'll probably touch on this a little later. But with that acquisition by In Moment, we had a small team, happened right when COVID happened. And just we were completely overwhelmed with the amount of work that we needed to do to get those companies integrated. And that's where I really gained a lot of experience on the tools and tech side. Had always had something in place before then, but really started to focus on building that out and figuring out how to do that process improvement. And it's while I was at that company that I first hit that, vice president level, and really just started to run things and tried to be more strategic and figure out how do we better partner with the business. So I'll leave it at that. That's kind of a long-winded answer as to kind of how I grew through the ranks, if you will.
No, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, none of us, start off or study RevOps back in grad school, right? Like, I think all of us end up in sales ops and RevOps in some sense, but, clearly, there are certain things and trigger points on, solving for the business that, leads you to, rise up and, become the leader in RevOps. Perfect. So let's talk about, how a day in the VP of RevOps looks like, right? And maybe Nate, if you want to go first and share, how does your daily day look like, and what do you do specifically to cover all of your responsibilities as a RevOps leader?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I had the perfect answer, and I wish I could come across and say I've got it all figured out and I know how to make all this work. Usually my days start at about 6 o'clock. And I am on meetings usually from about 6 to noon, maybe 1 o'clock. And we've just got some time zone issues that we work with a lot of folks in India and in Europe, and so I certainly would not complain. I'd rather start my day earlier than work as late as the team in India is. But that the whole morning is focused on meetings, and we're in the middle of a big IT project right now, so. I probably spend about 2 hours of that time in the morning just going over IT projects, right? What's the status? How do we map out what the business process is, what it should be? I pepper in some one-on-ones with my team. So usually 2 to 3 every day with the team. Try to have a team meeting in the mix somewhere in there. And then I've got, this morning, for example, we had Anil's leadership meeting, right? So I've got my meeting with my team, other meetings that we move up with different groups, and then various meetings where we read out or report out on objectives or metrics and that sort of thing. So you've got all those different meetings that take place, and then after that, I've got all my handwritten notes that I've scribbled down of all the things I need to get done, and you start working on those, try to figure out who on the team would be best equipped to handle this request or this project and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how the day goes. And then usually I try to spend, if the time allows, an hour or two just going through some of the emails that are important, reading through, trying to make sure I'm staying up to date on how things are moving. And ideally, if I can find the time, and I believe this is critical to do, it's just finding the time to do it. If I can just spend 30 minutes at some point during the day thinking through what has happened, what do I need to do? I know how to react quickly, but could I be a little more strategic? Can I figure out a better way to do this, or a better solution that hasn't been thought of? So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think especially, as I think Anil had mentioned early on, in the RevOps role, you could really get tactical with all of the to-dos, and you can keep going on and check boxing those to-dos, and then miss out on the, bigger strategic stuff. And we need to really carve out your time to be able to think through those. That's fantastic. How about you, Anil? How does your daily, work life look like?
Yeah, I thought Nate was going to say some smart aleck answer all the crazy questions for my boss in the morning. So I'm glad he did not say that. For me, I try to be very disciplined about the time that I spend, because to all of our points, I think you can go down a bunch of different, chasing inquiries and pulling a report or doing this. So what I try to do is a third, a third, a third. So a third of my day is focused on kind of in the business, where it's very tactical, day-to-day execution. The next third I consider on the business. So I really try hard to focus on strategic time. And it's very unstructured. My EA will block my day for 2 to 3 hours a day, and she won't schedule anything over that. And really what I think about is then long-term vision and how do we accelerate productivity levers, people, all that kind of good stuff. And then the last third for me is people. So running staff meetings, one-on-ones, mentorship, coaching and development, things like that. So a third in the business, a third on the business, and a third about the people is generally how and in any one week, last week we were at an executive offsite, right? So that completely threw my beautiful model out of the window. But generally, when I look back on the month, I try to go a third, a third, a third.
Yeah, I think that's a great framework for other RevOps leaders watching. Like now that you're a leader in RevOps, if you were to go back and tell something to your younger self, is there something that you wish you knew when you were starting off in RevOps?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of things. One is business is messy, right? And there's a ton of emotion behind the stuff that we do, right? RevOps in general, it's going to be it's going to be a highly emotional group that we're working with. So pulling above the noise and operating above the fray is something I try really hard to do. And by the way, I didn't do it very well this morning, right? So it is, you get wrapped up into we're dealing with commissions, we're dealing with President's Club, stuff like that is systems, we're playing with people's livelihoods, territories, like all that stuff is really sensitive, right? And so pulling above the noise and trying to really focus on the business is one thing I would encourage everybody to do, regardless of stage and maturity or tenure or whatever. And then the second one is this leadership by influence, and it's such a cliche thing, but it was such a career accelerator for me. Early on in my career, I felt like I had to own everything to be able to grow my career and accelerate and move on to the VP and SVP, until I finally started kind of getting to a point where we started, really understanding that you can influence if you can get others on the same page and you can have them understand what your vision is, then and getting them bought into that and getting them bought into the tactics behind that. That's where the magic really happens, right? Because you're not very directly going and telling somebody, hey, you have to do this, this, this. You're having them buy into an idea and then go execute behind that idea and be accountable to you. Much, much harder form of management and a leadership skill set that I think people just often overlook.
Yeah, I'll jump in a little bit as well. I think, and it's interesting. I mean, Anil's called out a couple of points, and I'm taking some good notes here. So I'm going to have to regroup and ask more questions on our next one-on-one. Something else, though, something I have learned, and I do wish I had learned much earlier on in my career, is there will always be something. There will always be a project or a deliverable where you're asked, hey, go get this done, go analyze this, go figure this out. And you're asked to do that. So it's your responsibility to go figure out how to do that. But there are times where you may not have all the answers, right? You might have, 80% of it, or you think you do. Early in my career, I would wait a long time. I would wait till crunch time if I couldn't figure something out. And then I'd scramble at the last minute. I need help with this. I just can't figure this part out. And really, the big thing was realizing if I just map out what I need to get done on a project or a deliverable early on and highlight the points where I don't have all the answers, I can quickly identify where I need to reach out to somebody. And they may need a little bit of time. They might be busy. They might want to help think things through a little bit. But I've realized if I can just raise my hand a little earlier on and get that help involved, it makes such a big difference. It makes it so that the level of stress is not as high. And then what you end up delivering usually is much, much better.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think obviously with all that both of you had described about some of the things that RevOps leaders should own and do, it seems like a lot of things to be for someone who's just starting their professional career in RevOps, or for that matter, who's just getting into the managerial and leadership aspirations in RevOps, right? So, Anil, if I were to ask you, how do you what are the kind of skill sets that leadership aspirants in RevOps should start to focus on? What are the things that they need to make sure they both technically as well as on the personal front group themselves up so that they're able to ready to take up a leadership role in RevOps?
I think like if I think about the skill sets, the technical side of it, what got you to a certain level, an executive level, is the skill sets and the project management and the kind of insights and analytics and the drive that you have. I would say never lose that, right? Because I'll give you an example. We were in a board meeting at one of my previous companies, and we were doing AOP and go-to-market strategy, and we were trying to figure out what that looks like for us. And everybody was just tossing around a bunch of ideas. I think we've all been in those meetings, and here we just had a bunch of executives in our board together. And what I was quickly able to do is pull down a large amount of data. We were able to ingest that data into a Google Sheet. I built a really quick go-to-market framework. And then we started iterating on it. What if our ASP goes up? What if our cycle time goes down? What if we have more reps, less rep, quotas go up? And it turned into a 4-hour painful but productive session. But if I wasn't, the commentary I got back from others afterwards was like, wow, it's really cool to see that you can still do that and you didn't have to go call someone in to go do that. So I would say never lose track of that skill set. Getting in the middle of the spreadsheets and the data pulls and the SQL queries and all that, like you have to keep doing that. Personally, I would say there are a couple things that really differentiate folks for me. One is I just watched some people that are really good at, Nate's really good at it, but the ability to take large amounts of data and touch points, ingest them, think through them, pattern match, and then find the next step, right? And so find an action that's correlated to those. The ability to take that large amount in, ingest it, and spit it back out with some insight is a pretty rare form. You would think it's pretty easy, but it's a pretty rare form. And more so doing it in an executive style. So, whenever I get emails, if I get emails that are pages long, I get lost, right? And so Nate's laughing. He knows I get lost. I can't read them. I don't understand them. Whereas if you give me 3 bullets, I get it, right? So the executive communication is another piece of it. On the softer skill side, connecting the dots. And this is really what I think is the elevating factor from a good VP to a great one. The ability to look across CS and BD and AE and CSM and product and be able to pattern match between those and understand the down and upstream implications is a rarity, right? Someone that understands those businesses and can really figure out this optimization point on, if a BDR has a tighter qualification criteria, the impact of churn, like that is 2 or 3 steps removed from it. And someone that can do that pattern matching is really important for me. In terms of how to go get that and how to practice that, I would say observe others. I can promise you there are people around you that may be in your chain of command, that may be next to you, that may be people kind of in your organization. Observe others, watch them, listen to the questions that they ask. There are some really, I've watched a couple folks that are just brilliant at this, where the question may be a leading question, but the question is definitely headed somewhere, right? And it's a very insightful, thought-provoking question that really helps others kind of find the truth. dig deep into the business, and then I'd say follow your instincts. A lot of times, if something doesn't feel right, and you don't feel the connection, poke at it. Go ask why 5 times. Go do those things and learn the business. I think you will find that there's going to be some, something that you can uncover there that you can go fix.
I'll echo one thing if I can. One thing that Anil just called out, and he called it out, something to try. He is a master at it, and that is just asking those questions. He'll ask questions just to get people in the room to start thinking about things. You can tell when the question is asked, he knows the direction he wants it to go, but he's also very good at taking a step back and letting that discussion happen. And if the discussion tends to go in circles or move in different directions, he lets it go, and it just gets people thinking. And the question is designed to bring out the thoughts, not necessarily to give an answer.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Nate. And I think I really loved what you said around, obviously not losing in touch with what kind of, made you, get to rise up in your RevOps career, which is, core hands-on, analytics and being able to manage data and, generate insights. Because at the end of the day, I think that's something that I've also seen, if you have insights, you get a seat at the table, right? You are able to share some business impactful decision that would come after that insight, but just getting that insight and being able to be hands-on, and like what you described on that executive meeting where you could just pull in that model together. I think that's certainly great skill sets to continue to maintain as you grow. But after that, layering it up with good communication, being able to understand different businesses and put all of that together is really what will help elevate you beyond just a managerial role, say for example in RevOps. Love all those insights. Fantastic. So let's jump into some of the things on how others view the RevOps, right? Like, so if you were to talk about CEO, or for that matter, the SVPs or in revenue, how do they look at RevOps? What does the CEO want out of their VP of RevOps today?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my CEO and I, we've had this discussion, and at a couple of companies, RevOps has been tucked underneath the CRO and some other places. And in my last 3 companies, we've pulled it out, and we've elevated that role and reported it directly to either CEO or group president, something like that. We pulled it out to make it a peer across CMO, CRO. So today my staff meeting is, or my leadership meeting is CRO, CMO, myself, and then CCO, right? And so much different landscape when you're sitting across from the team versus if you're tucked in one of those teams. And when I kind of think about a CEO view of RevOps, forget the level. I think they look for 3 things. I know they look for 3 things. One is a truth teller. Because if you go ask a CRO, how are you doing? I'm crushing it. I'm doing well. Productivity's going great. Like things need more people. ASP is down because product stinks. And like, it's very tough for a CEO, so this, to cut through the noise of business, right? Or you've got to have a CEO that's willing to oscillate between marketing and sales and CS, and they've got to go figure it out for themselves. Well, RevOps is that one person, one group that doesn't have a vested interest in any one of those functions. So I always tell everybody that we're the truth tellers. We come out, we elevate, and we'll bring out the truth, not to point one person out or another, one organization out, but it's just to elevate that level of thinking and then drive that partnership. 2 is to drive and translate board vision into execution. So there's a part of our roles that, we get to sit in board meetings, we get to listen to the strategic direction of a company. And then it's our responsibility to take that and make it really happen. Take all those fluffy words that happen up there and go do it. Turn it into a comp plan, turn it into a territory, turning it into an initiative. And then the last piece is the connective tissue. So I love the fact, I was looking through the attendee list. I love the fact that there are BDRs on here, right? Sometimes they're the overlooked function in a lot of organizations. But the connective tissue then gets to tie that BDR into and their qualification criteria. If they're really wide and they open up the aperture, well, we should assume that all rates are going to go down, close rates are going to go down, cycle times are going to go up, ASPs are going to go down. Like all of that makes a ton of sense. So the connective tissue across an organization is also the other part. The handoffs, all of that is what I expect RevOps to play. So three things: truth teller, translating board vision into execution, and then connective tissue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, especially from a standpoint of translating broad vision into execution. It's obviously easy to get things done on a spreadsheet, but, getting all of that actually executed and bringing teams together, bringing leaders together, and really being able to orchestrate what's that was planned for the year into life is something that's a big skill set, certainly for someone in the leadership role of for RevOps. And so that leads me to another question, right? Like, and would love to hear from both of you, Anil and Nate. Like, how should RevOps leaders manage a relationship with other peers in the business, on the sales side, on the marketing side, on the customer success side, for that matter? Like, any tips or tricks that's worked for you in your journeys?
I'll take a first stab at this. Probably the one thing I remember the most, the first thing I would say is it's important to build those relationships of trust early on. You want to make sure that you're a trusted partner with those organizations. The one thing that I still remember, it's in fact when Anil and I first started working together, I started at inside sales right in the month of December. And I remember a lot of people were taking time off for the holidays. And so I'm supposed to be doing deal desk and working with all these sellers. And we had a large group of sellers. And most of them were starting to check out for the holidays. And I thought, boy, I should have been smart and put my start date in January, and taken this month off and, whatever. But what I decided to do is I needed to, for this deal desk role, I needed to go and develop a good relationship with finance and with legal. I needed to figure out with those two groups, more importantly than the rest, what are the important pieces or what are the important things and the decisions that you have to make? And what is the time that you have to provide to the sales resources to be able to help get those deals done? I spent 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks nonstop, just working with those two groups, sitting down with them and figuring out, look, what are the things you'll allow me to take off your plate? I'm here to help you. I'm here to be the person in the middle so that I can free up your time to be more strategic and take more time there. And as my role evolved from deal desk into more of the RevOps functions and that sort of thing, those relationships still paid off. And there was a good level of trust there to where we knew each other. We knew what each other were thinking. We trusted that we wouldn't overstep our bounds. And I think those relationships, those are critical. You've got to establish that trust early on.
Yeah, I agree in the investing in the relationship. I think really spending time and understanding the individual on the other side of the table is crucial. Understand what a CMO, a CRO, a CCO really cares about. And same thing with finance, right? Finance is, they've also got some things that they are super passionate about, and some things that fall to the bottom. I think the relationship side of it and a good, strong partnership is key. I also view our jobs as poking at that a touch. So I'm not afraid to have a spicy conversation with the CMO just in the interest of challenging a bit and making sure that, some of the things that we're saying and we're pushing and investing in are the right answers. I like to go push the boundaries a touch and see what I get back. And sometimes people will back off immediately after a soft push, and then I know there's not a lot of passion behind it, right? There's not a lot of belief in it. So I think that's the other part is it's our jobs to pressure test the system and the investments and the all of that and the talk tracks to make sure they're solid and they're real. And I would tell you, like, there's one thing is I think about that full life cycle and the relationships, and maybe the provocative nature of some of these conversations. I won't mention the person's name, but I was having a conversation about with the CMO, and I asked him, I said, hey, by campaign source, do you know your churn rate? And that's now 3 or 4 steps gone, right? Like that's all the way from top of funnel through BDR, through AE to whatever, to CSM. And they said, no, of course I don't. I'm like, all right, well, there you go, right? Like you can't tell me the LTV of a customer and what it costs to acquire them, we know, but like what's the churn rate? Like how long are we keeping them? And I think really driving and opening up those leaders a little bit to think about the world a little more broadly, and they don't have to understand CS, but they have to appreciate it, right? And so I like to have a little bit of those challenging conversations and driving into those.
Fantastic. And in fact, one point that I wanted to double click on, Anil, was something that you said in the previous question, which was around how you saw RevOps and just the revenue strategy as rising up and being an equal with the CRO and the CMO. A lot of organizations, obviously, you see the VP of RevOps kind of rolling up into the CRO or sometimes into the CFO org itself. So what do you think? I mean, obviously, what's your advice, obviously, to executives out there, as well as from a professional standpoint, what do they need to do to be able to ensure that the CEOs and the board thinks of this as a separate role that has a relationship directly with the CEO and not reporting into, say, the revenue function or, for that matter, the CFO function?
I think some of it is just the tailwinds of the industry, right? Let's face it, we're in a high demand profession right now, and the market for RevOps professionals has really been skyrocketing here recently. So some of it is just tailwinds. If today you report into a CRO, a CMO, like wherever, it's okay. I would punch above your weight class would be my feedback, right? Is don't be constrained by a reporting chain of command to be able to execute your job. So my feedback to you would be, kind of pulling and elevating your thinking, elevating the way that in any one meeting, how you come to the table. Really think about splitting your time a third, and that lets you focus on the strategic view. As I think about my quiet third, I look at the meetings that are going on in the next couple of weeks and how I want to present both myself and the company in those meetings. Transitioning from reporting to insights, like, at a lot of companies, people fight over who generates the report. And it's like, who really cares, right? Like, I don't really care who generates the report. What I want is what that report says, right? Like, tell me what it means. That's where the value is at. Reactive versus proactive, anticipating the problems, I think, is really key. So RevOps has this, like, hey, go do this a lot of times. And you got to get out of that world, right? Like, go sit down with your CMO. What are the top 10 metrics? What are your North Star metrics? What do you use to define success? And here you go. Here's a report that we can talk about every week if you want about those. But more importantly, the conversation I want to have with you is like, hey, this trend is down. Here's why I think it's down. This keyword is starting to lose traction. My competitors are bidding on it. Price is going up. I don't care. And here's what I think we need to go do about it. So in any one kind of analytics meeting, I asked the team 3 questions. What happened? Why did it happen? And what are you going to go do about it? And it's a really simple framework to really put people on the action-oriented path rather than looking backwards and kind of trying to fall backwards and defensive. Other things, asking why. I'm a big fan of the 5 why method. I think it was Jack Welch just saying that, just really digging deep, right to the point where people get annoyed, right? Like, okay, Neil, don't you understand this by now? Then I know I got at the core of it. And then the last piece I'd say is what we just talked about is challenging. Our jobs are to push status quo. It's not to maintain status quo. There's a part of our business that we have to maintain. Our jobs are to challenge or to optimize or to enhance. So I'm a big fan of the flywheel concept, and I've used it in so many talks across my career. But if you think about our business as a flywheel, there are multiple, the way a flywheel operates is the more energy that goes in, the faster that spins and the more that comes out. And along the way, there are so many different optimization points. And think about our business as that. Think about our qualification rate as a flywheel touch point. Think about our ASP. Think about our quality of AE. Think about comp. Those are all little touch points you can play with, right? And so I would say your job is to challenge the business, not to just kind of keep it running. Keeping it running, anybody can. That's run rate business. Your job's to optimize.
Fantastic. So many, great takeaways there. I realize, we're coming to the end of this webinar, so we should summarize, some a lot of the, good takeaways that we've had. So maybe Nate, if you want to go first and share, what you say as some key takeaways for revenue operations professionals looking or watching this webinar at this point.
Yeah, I think we've touched on it a little bit through some of the other comments and questions, but I think the big thing is just don't be afraid to ask questions. I think, like I said, building those relationships is important, and Anil touched on this. They're important, but you also, by having that relationship of trust with people, you can now start to ask hard questions, and they don't take offense. You'll have that relationship, and they'll know you're coming from a good place. So just be prepared to ask the right questions. As things get busy and the backlog of things that you've got to get done grows and grows, what I find, I do this all the time, and I know I shouldn't, and I try to take a step back, is after a while, I look at how much I've got to get done, and those questions start to fade away because the questions in your mind, they just take more time, right? And if you ask the questions, you're probably going to realize, oh, there's more work I've got to do here. And so as we get busier, we tend to stop doing that, and I think that's a big mistake. So I think for me, the final takeaway would be just continue to ask those questions. Be curious. Don't settle for the status quo. Don't settle for whatever is told to you right up front. Be curious. Ask the questions. Dig into the data. And once you're looking at the data, ask why. Is there more data I can dig into to help clarify something? But always be curious and always ask why.
Yeah, always be curious and always ask why. Thanks, Nate. I think those were brilliant learnings and takeaways that you shared. Anil, if you want to summarize your learnings and takeaways.
Yeah, I would say that definitely that curiosity, and I can see the chat blowing up with that. I think it is absolutely bang on, the 5 whys, all that good stuff. And then I think the concept of punching above your weight class, regardless of the table that you're sitting at, ask those questions and feeling confident and comfortable. Now, obviously, having a frame of reference, if you're sitting in a board meeting hammering on a CRO in front of the board about their ASP and why they're not selling more multi-product, maybe not the right forum, but feeling really comfortable that you can ask those questions and confident that you can ask those questions. And then the other piece is around technology, and we didn't touch on that too much here, but technology is such a big productivity lever, right? And understanding the proper technology, I think we've all seen that chart with 400 or 500 different types of tools and tech within a SaaS community. But technology is really a key and a productivity unlock. So one of the things that I'd say all of us should really think about is how do we adequately leverage the proper technology to drive efficiency, productivity, visibility, and getting that in a repeating cadence. I bet you find some efficiency gains out of that.
That's awesome. Thanks again, Nate and Anil. I think this has been, a fantastic webinar. Learning through your journey of, figuring out things as you grew in your RevOps career, and then sharing all of that wisdom, especially a lot of those frameworks, Anil, that you threw on 1/3 of your time, being split across the 3 different areas. I think this was a great session. I learned a bunch of things as well. So thanks again for sharing all your wisdom, and I'm sure the audience loved it. Over to Angelica.
Yeah, echoing what Siva said, thank you, Anil and Nate, for that amazing session and sharing your wisdom and insights. I was reading the chat, and I'm sure the audience feel the same sentiment. So thank you again for your time and participation. Thank you, audience, for attending this session. Just a quick reminder that this session, along with the key takeaways, the recording will be made available on the MSP website before the end of the day. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you at the next event. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.